All right, at some point in your city making, you are probably going to want to be able to add shadows to the buildings to, help sort of make everything feel a little bit more real. So I'm going to show you how to add shadows because instead of making individual shadow assets for every single one of these buildings that might not even suit your need, I'm going to show you how to make them yourself. Now, these are the same buildings I was using in the previous color overlay video. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go ahead and merge both of these together so that I've got everything on the same layer here. Generally, what I recommend as you get closer to finishing your city is trying to keep, pardon me, like, goodness gracious, likewise elements together. In this case, I would recommend keeping most buildings on the same layer. If you have any trees in the map, I might keep those in the same layer, like a city wall, for example. Anything that are going to cast different lengths of shadows, you're probably going to want to keep in different layers. I'll show you why in a moment. So if you double click on the layer of any element in your map that you want to add shadows to, the layer style window is going to pop up. In there are several options. We just looked at how to use the color overlay. I'll show you how to use the inner glow when we use the dirt road brush, but for us, we're going to want to use the drop shadow. So if you click on that, it's going to add the sort of default shadow to your city here. Okay, I'll move that to the side so you can see it. All right. And in here are a few options. It's going to set the color to black by default and the blending mode to multiply by default. You can slide this up and down to get darker or lighter shadows. You can adjust this angle here to adjust from what angle light would be hitting the object that's casting that shadow. Distance will create the distance between the shadow and the object that is casting it. Generally, unless you have some kind of floating city situation, you probably don't want ever more than like, I don't know, maybe 10 pixels of distance, somewhere between 2 and 10. Size will create the size of the shadow itself, how far out it blends. You can see it also kind of, if you drag it all the way down, you have a very crisp shadow. Drag it up a bit further, it creates a larger shadow that fades out more but becomes more indistinct. If you want a larger shadow that is still distinct for some reason, you can create a larger size and then increase the spread. All in all, basically a bunch of options that will help you kind of customize the shadow as you wish. Generally, I like a slightly larger distance and a slightly smaller size than that, and maybe like a 60% opacity. And if you really want to, you can even add a little bit of noise to it to kind of break up the texture of that. Obviously, if you go too far, it's going to look kind of ridiculous, but if you add, I don't know, somewhere between 1 and 5% noise, sometimes that can help with the texture of the ground underneath it as well. Not such that that perfect sort of computer blend of shadow. So that's the basic idea right there. In addition, you could even move your mouse out into here, and Photoshop lets you sort of drag and move the shadow around if you need to adjust the distance and angle that way. Instead of having to slide bars, you can sort of just drag it yourself. And sometimes what I will also like to do is actually have 2 layers of drop shadows, one that is a little bit further out like the one I've got here, and one that might be a little bit closer to the building. Can't totally verbalize as to why I like that. I think it just kind of helps the shadow stand out a bit more and fade better. Total personal preference, but you can see, so this is the larger shadow, this is the smaller shadow, this is them together, and I'm sure you can find lots of other variations there. If you'd like to, you could even try using a different color than black. I sometimes like to use a darker blue color in some cases. Hard to tell the difference there, but it'll create more of a colored, cool shadow rather than just a flat black. All right, so that's how you add shadows. You can imagine doing that to all of the elements of your map there, and all of a sudden everything kind of feels more anchored within the map and more real and like a sense of space. Okay? Have fun.